Welcome to the first Mishnah which we are learning in our series on Pirkei Avot, the ethics of the fathers. You'll find it in the Green Siddur on page 524 and in the Koren NCSY Siddur Tribe edition, this one over here, on page 749. Now, in our introductory video to Pirkei Avot, we explained why we read this tractate, how it has so many of the fundamentals of what it means to live as a Jew and the daily decisions which we need to take. In this video, we will study the first part of the section of Pirkei Avot. Now, when we recite Pirkei Avot in Shul on Shabbat afternoons in the summer, or in fact, not just in Shul, it's during our Shabbat afternoon prayers during the summer between Pesach and Rosh Hashanah, we study a chapter a week and we introduce it with a preamble which reads as follows: Kol Yisrael yeshem chelek le'olam haba. All Israel have a share in the world to come, and I'm using Rabbi Lord Sax's translation here. Shene Emar, as it is said, Va'amech kulam tzadikim. Your people are all righteous. Le'olam yirushu aretz. They shall inherit the land forever. Neitzei mata'ai. They are a shoot of my own planting, says God. A work of my hands that I may be glorified. And this, I think, is a very beautiful introduction for Pirkei Avot, because it says this is something which any Jew can tap into. And any Jew, wherever they may be, whatever their background might be, we hope is able to learn and live the lessons of Pirkei Avot. And by doing so, and the actions which they thereby perform, they show that they are part of the community of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people. And that's, I think, a very beautiful and warming thought, and also one which demonstrates not just the significance of Pirkei Avot, but its ongoing relevance to every Jew, I would suggest, throughout the ages. It's not about specific legal situations or specific legal discussions. It's about the values which underpin the way we live as Jews, where we've come from, and where we should be going to. And the first Mishnah puts this into context for us. This is chapter 1, Mishnah 1. The Mishnah says as follows: Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai. Moses received Torah from Sinai. Again, I'm using Rabbi Sax's translation. Tzara li Hoshua, and handed it on to Joshua. V'Hoshua liskenim. Joshua handed it on to the elders. These were the elders who were around at the time of Moses, and then elders were around in his generation, in Joshua's generation as well. Uskenim l'nviim. And as the Kenim, the elders, senior members of the community, to Nevi'im, to prophets. Prophets being people who are spokespersons, as it were, for God. They're not a Nostradamus-esque figure, but they are spokespersons for God. Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and others, just to give some examples of the biblical prophets, who gave messages from God to the people. And the Nevi'im, the prophets, passed on Torah to the men of the Great Assembly, a group of 120 scholars which existed over a number of centuries towards the end of the biblical period and even slightly after the end of the biblical period as well. And they, as we will see, were critical in passing on these values and the framework of Jewish life. They said three things. Hevu matunin badin, be careful in judgment. V'hamidu tamidim harbei, and raise up many disciples. V'asu siyag la Torah, and make a fence for the Torah. Now, the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, I'm just going to focus on them very, very briefly. The Talmud tells us, the Talmud is the main work of Jewish law and ethics. The Talmud tells us that they instituted, for example, brachot and havdalot, the concept that we have in Jewish life of saying brachot before performing a mitzvah or before enjoying something such as food and drink. And when saying a bracha, saying a blessing, one is not only focusing on what one is about to do, but one is also thinking again about how things come to us from God. They don't just come because of the work of our own hands. The saying brachot helps us become more sensitive, more thoughtful people. And that's an example of the values of this Mishnah and the entire Pirkei Avot, which go all the way back to Mount Sinai. And that's why the men of the Great Assembly say, whether you are a judge or not, because everybody has to make judgments during the course of their life, Hevu mutunin badin, be deliberate and thoughtful in judgment. Think about the ramifications of your actions, the way you relate to other people, the way you think about other people. V'ha'amidu talmidim harbe. Make many students come because of what you have done. This is not just talking about teaching in the formal setting, but the example that we set through our actions, the way we live as Jews, the way that we can inspire others, which everybody can do through the actions that they take, whether on a smaller or a greater level. And then v'asus siyag laTorah, make a fence around the Torah to protect it. Live in a way that makes sure that we are guarding the Torah and doing what the Torah expects of us. Not just the performance of the mitzvot, of the commandments, but in the values which we display and the ways that we live our lives. And all of these ideas go all the way back to Mount Sinai, to God giving the Torah. They are an essential part of what it means to be a Jew. So that's Mishnah 1 of Pirkei Avot. I hope you found it a good introduction to the coming material, which I hope you'll also watch in the videos which will be posted on our site. And I hope you will continue to benefit from Pirkei Avot, and I certainly do every time I'm fortunate enough to learn it or be able to teach it, with new ideas and new perspectives always coming up. Have a great day.